Welcome to Aragone Advisors, the podcast where expertise meets strategy. In every episode, we're going to bring you insider knowledge about real estate, wealth creation, estate planning, and key strategies to grow and protect your assets. I'm Paula Aragone, your host, and today we have Cheryl Barrett with Ferruzzo joining us. We're going to be discussing something critical, which is true expert advice and having the right team. Have you ever felt like your agent wasn't really listening, or the advice they were providing wasn't in alignment with what you wanted? Well, you're not alone. Many people have those problems. Actually, the client which we just helped had that exact problem. She was being advised by two local real estate agents on something that was not what she intended to do. And that's when the attorney came in, the estate planning attorney came in and said, why don't you look at a fresh new start, get another advice from another agent? And we came in and we help her. So Cheryl, thank you so much for being here with us today.
My pleasure, always a pleasure, Paula.
So talk about the right team, having the right legal counsel. Tell us a little bit, you've been with Ferruzzo for many years. We've had you before in the podcast, but we always tell our clients, talk with your counsel about everything. The counsel has to be aware of everything that you intend to do when you are having to act as a trustee or an executor. Tell us how your approach is different from other attorneys.
Well, I can't speak to other attorneys, of course, but I can tell you that we are very, very pro-team.
Okay.
We like to have a team effort because we're legal experts. But do I know anything about selling a house? Where to sign on the dotted line?
Yes.
That's about it. So from a standpoint of, we love working with qualified, excellent CPAs, financial advisors, and when there is the need for a sale, expert real estate agents and brokers.
Perfect.
Because you cannot, and we're in the age of expertise.
Exactly.
No one is a jack of all trades. You can't know it all. What we hope is that because of our years of experience, we hope to bring to the client experts in the fields that, of course, we're not.
I agree. And I always say, you want your agent discussing options with you that are in alignment with what your needs are, but also relaying that information to the attorney to make sure that what they're doing is in line with their fiduciary responsibilities, right? Because there's high stakes in transactions where you have beneficiaries, where you can have somebody that is not in agreement with fixing up a house, so now you're making decisions that your attorney doesn't know you're making. So I always say, when an attorney brings you into a case or a matter and you're advising your client of certain things, and we'll get into this case study, you have to make sure that you're expressing to the attorney exactly what you guys are going to do to make sure every T is crossed, every I is dotted. And that's why for me, teamwork is the best work, right? Because you are protecting everybody.
Correct, absolutely. And what I found when I do work with a team, be that a real estate agent or be that a CPA, sometimes the client will say something to them that they didn't tell me, and had I known that, number one, I could have maybe facilitated and made it the obtaining of the goal a lot easier. Or if they're thinking they want to do something that could get them in trouble, it would be really good if I knew that beforehand.
I agree, and I always tell my clients, what you don't know could cost you money. And when it comes to, an attorney and having somebody protecting you, looking at the fine print, saying, okay, this is what you are allowed to do, this is what you cannot do. And sometimes clients, they think they grasp the concept or they understand, but they still have doubts, right? And so the ones that win are the ones that have that attorney that it's going to be, they are guiding them through the entire process. Not just you come into the office, this is what you can do, and then they leave. Because I know that, for example, in this particular situation, every time she had questions, the client, I would say, you know what, that I think that's not what Cheryl meant. Why don't you reach back out to her and you confirm that? Because it's very important to reassure them that if this is something they're not doing right, the attorney will guide them on the right direction.
Yes. And as you point out, the stakes are really high. There is no, or virtually no, cheap real estate in Orange County. The trustee is liable. There are a lot of due diligence things that have to happen. So it is really essential that there is that team. And when you have worked with somebody before, like you and I have worked several transactions together. So I appreciate that your warning bell went, it's probably not what she said. You might want to check that out.
Yes.
And your knowledge of the legal process and what we have to do, it isn't just go see the real estate agent and put the sign up and sell the house the next day. It doesn't work
that way.
Even if you were fortunate enough to sell the house that quickly, there's protocol, procedures, notices, giving beneficiaries the opportunity to object, and if they have objections, we want to know
what they are.
What is that?
Yeah.
You know, is the price not right? Are you giving
not
too
understanding
much?
sometimes?
Are you doing too much for the buyer? I mean, to be honest, it doesn't happen very often at all. No. Usually beneficiaries smell money.
Yes.
And they're usually pretty cooperative. But it's human nature to want to be informed.
I agree.
And it only enhances the trustee's credibility to be transparent and do what the law requires. Notify the beneficiaries.
Correct.
Give them their 45 days. And unfortunately,
yes.
And this is a difference between trust and
probate,
as you know. In probate, you only need notice 15 days.
Yeah.
Which is tough, but it's reasonable. Regrettably, under trust law, we have a 45-day notice requirement. I'll tell you what, though, I've yet to see beneficiaries take the 45 days. In my entire practice, it's happened once. She didn't object. She just was being passive-aggressive and made us wait the whole 45 days.
And that's one other thing that, going back to that, I tell my clients, with the wrong advice, not only you're going to lose time, but you'll also lose money and peace of mind. Because what happens is when you don't have the proper advice, you can go down that rabbit hole, that one thing leads to another one, frustration from the beneficiaries, lack of notices that are, the agent didn't know, she didn't inform the attorney, they didn't send out the notice, now the buyer can't close escrow. It brings a whole other set of events, and then everybody gets upset, where it could have been so easy.
Exactly. Upset over nothing.
Over nothing.
Right. But simple communication, and again, that level of transparency. Yes, I'm the oldest kid, and so mom and dad picked me.
Poor kid!
To be, right?
Poor kid, I always say, I'm sorry.
But it's just, again, it's human nature. It's human dynamic. And even the kids will say, yeah, okay, well, it makes sense that this one is the trustee. But, there's that mom liked you best thing that goes on.
And there's so much that goes with being the trustee. I always say there's things that I'm not going to be able to help you, but my job is to remove 50% of your stress and to get you to the finish line in the shortest amount of time with the highest amount of return on what we're doing, right? And then they feel, oh my God, thank you for saying that. Because not many people understand what a trustee goes through. It's not easy. Emotion, the level of work.
The emotion, I want to focus on that for a minute. I think a lot of times beneficiaries are, why is it taking them? But they don't, And they should, because they're going through their own level of grief too.
They are.
But very often the trustee, is the child, is the spouse. They've lost a huge figure in their life, and in the case of spouses, there's a part of themselves that is lost.
Oh, for sure.
The way they present to the world as a married person. And especially marriages of a long duration. So to expect immediate response and immediate actions, it's reasonable to expect it, and we have to move through that, and which is why having a good team helps you do that.
Oh, I am telling you, throughout the years, and we've been doing this for 23 years, and throughout the years we see when they start, and we see the peace by the time we finish. Mm-hmm. When we start is that emotion where I'm selling my parents' house, or that's the house where we all grew up, or there's so many emotions that come from the sale of a property that was inherited and it was the family home. And then you see them by the time we finish, they have peace. The chapter is closed. They've made a lot more money by working with us, and we'll get into this case study, but in this particular situation, this client was being advised, don't do anything. Sell it as a tear down. You can get 5 million, maybe 5.2, but it's a tear down. You shouldn't waste time, you should just sell it as is. And because Cheryl said, get a fresh look.
And I'm loath to step on anybody's
toes.
Absolutely, but at the same time, I said, look, you've talked to two.
Yeah.
It's not going to hurt to talk to one more.
I agree.
Just give Paula a chance.
Yes.
Because I know you magic you can work. And the other thing was that I know that, one, you're excellent with people who are grieving and understand. You're extremely empathetic to what they're going through. And two, I knew that you, because I've worked with you before when we've had trustees that were out of the state, that you and your team could take the burden off of her to a very great extent in getting the house ready for sale, and much less the upgrades that you did.
Yes, and that's why I always say, we had one client. I think it was the best testimonial I got in 23 years. And she wrote, and I have it in writing, she said, give this woman room and let her work a miracle for you too. That's what she said.
But it's so true.
And so when I talked with them, I said, you don't have to do anything. Let me handle everything for you. And they're like, really? And they don't grasp the concept, because it is a big project to turn a house like what we did in the short amount of time that we did it, and especially with the holidays. But yes, in this situation, she felt the need to have that third conversation because of your expert advice to her. And when we had the conversation, she felt at peace. She was like, you can do this for me? Yes. And I always under-promise and over-deliver. Mm-hmm. So you remember the conversation. I was like, if we do ABC, I can get you probably 6.5. And then ABC got done, and the house went from a tear down to a move-in ready house. Mm-hmm. Brand new floors, brand new kitchen, remodeled almost everything that we could with a very tight budget. And we decided, I called her and I said, let's go 6.9. And she was like, I like that number. And we got 7.2. So by putting a little bit of money, which wasn't much, this trust was able to maximize the sale and get 2.2 million more than they would have got by not doing anything. Exactly. The reality is, it does solidify the relationship, and it makes the trustee show that they cared, that they put the good effort forward on doing what was right for everybody.
Right.
And in this case, again, we got it done so quickly. By the time we had the first conversation and by the time it's finished and closed, it was nothing, less than 3 months, 2 months and something. And that is a quick close for the family, for the beneficiaries.
Unbelievable, yeah.
And that's what we always say, that's when everybody wins. Mm-hmm. The attorney wins because they had a client that they were able to guide to a successful close of their estate, and then at the same time get the happiness of knowing that everybody's content. Everybody had a good transaction. Everybody feels that they were fair and they got their fair share.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
So that's what we do. We always say, whatever your case might be, talk with your attorneys, talk with your estate planning attorneys, because what works for you today might not work in 3 years. So always plan for the future, but constantly reevaluate. We have clients that they lose the husband or the wife, the partner, and they don't sit down again with their attorney.
So important. And a really good example of this is the clients that we talked to, let's say 6-7 years ago, pre-Prop 19.
Oh!
So they've got several properties and they think their children are going to keep the same property tax base because that's the way it was.
For many years.
To a degree. For my entire practice until February 2021. The law changes drastically. And that can have a real impact on the estate plan. Or at least, at minimum, it's going to have an impact on expectations. The client's expectations and clearly the beneficiary's expectations.
Of moving into the house,
right.
If they want to keep the tax base somebody needs to move into the house and live in the house. But that means you might have to pay your siblings, the other beneficiaries, for their share of the house, right?
Yeah, exactly. So by checking in every 4 to 5 years, so that's an example of a change in the property tax law. We know there's going to be a change in the estate tax law.
And another one that I always talk about is you started 50 years ago. You have a business. You bought property. You've been accumulating wealth. And yes, we have the inheritance tax exemption for X amount, right? But sometimes by the time they die, they are over the 13 million. And so if they had analyzed their assets, if they had taken a quick look with their attorney and say, okay, I need to know what my business is worth, what my company is worth, what my 5 properties are worth, so I can plan ahead for the future.
Right.
So I always say, sit with them. If they need an analysis on a property to know the market value, we provide it. But sit down and analyze what you have so you can plan accordingly, because you could be doing right? You could be planning so that you don't end up giving the IRS 50% of your asset.
Yes. Are there other things that can be done to mitigate or eliminate the estate tax exemption? Even with Prop 19, there are things that
you can do.
If you do it correctly, that again can mitigate or eliminate the increase in taxes. So it is.
Would you say yearly, every 3 years? What would you say it's a good rule of thumb?
Rule of thumb is 4 to 5 years.
4 to 5 years,
yeah.
Okay. Or when something happens, an event that takes place, right?
So when we say something, we're talking about a major change in wealth. That could go up or could go down. If you could be in a very complex trust that you did 10 years ago, and your trust calls for a division, trust A, trust B, this kind of thing, but your estate is below the federal estate tax exemption.
Agree.
So maybe you don't need a trust that calls for all of that. Because it can go both ways. clients whose estates have grown and clients whose estates have grown, but not the way the federal estate tax exemption is
Correct.
grown. So do we need this level
Of complexity.
of complexity in our lives?
Now, another thing I say is going back to the team is who's going to be the trustee. And those are the things you need to discuss with your estate planning attorney, because every family dynamics is different, right? What works for one family might not work for the other one. Sometimes you need a corporate trustee. Sometimes you need a professional fiduciary. Sometimes you want to get one of your children as trustee, or you had one, but that person is no longer on a position to act as trustee.
Yes.
And I think that you are very good at that, sitting down with them and explaining the cons and the pros of going this direction or that direction.
Sure. Sometimes there's a psychological, not a legal reason
Correct.
to choosing the trustee that you're choosing. Going back to 4 kids and you choose one, that is absolutely legal.
Correct.
But I like to talk to them about how this is going to play out.
Yes.
Because sometimes it's absolutely fine. Everybody in the family knows that's the kid that's good at that kind of stuff. And sometimes it's not going to work. Doesn't matter any of the children. They don't get along.
Correct.
And so it's not a good idea.
I agree. And I think it's like, all of a sudden family dynamics change because maybe those kids, when that kid was named trustee, he wasn't married and now he's married, and then the wife or the husband has a say on things. And
yes, that happens too. The domineering in-law.
I agree.
Yes, so it's good to come in and talk. I think a lot of clients think there's nothing that they can do about that. And not maybe so much in the trustee position, but they're worried that, well, I'm going to die and everything's going to my child, but if my child dies, then everything will end up with the in-laws. And I don't want that to happen, or what if they get a divorce? And so there are things that we can do. There are structures that we can
To
set in
minimize.
place. Yes, to protect in the event of a divorce or in the event of even asset protection within the estate plan.
And that's so important, Cheryl. I say we work so hard to build wealth. And what you want to do is leave a legacy for generations to come. You don't want your wealth to be gone within 5 years
Right.
of your death. You want things to be there for the next generations. And how do you do that? By planning. I always say plan ahead for the future. That's the best piece of advice I think we can give to people. And for me, it's so sad when I see another probate. People don't know what they don't know. And that's why for me it's so important to keep educating people. Get your trust in place. Get your affairs in order. Talk with the right team to help you plan for the future.
So many times, let's face it, we're talking death and taxes.
Yes, who wants to talk that?
Mankind's favorite topics, right? But the thing, I will tell you, the consistent comment that I get after we've set the plan in place is, wow, I have a lot of peace of mind now.
You see peace. I tell people all the time, do you know, by the time you finish, you will feel such at peace.
Exactly. And I tell them it's Murphy's Law. Now that you've done this,
You don't need it.
nothing's going to happen. You're going to be fine. You're going to live to be 150 years old, and you're never going to get sick, and you're never going to die. And,
Good.
and of course, that's not totally true, but the reality is that it's when you see these huge messes and probates that go on for 3, 4, 5 years.
And litigation. And
And then you're like, or worse yet, you're not dead. You're in the hospital, but nobody can get to the bank account and pay for the hospital.
I agree.
There are all these kinds of messes that
Could have been avoided.
Could have been so easily avoided.
So the advice is plan for the future ahead. Plan
and
today.
Stay updated.
Yes.
Your powers of attorney legally never expire, but it's not true in real life. Title companies, especially, a power of attorney that's more than 4 or 5 years old, they might not accept it. And then we end up in a conservatorship.
Which nobody wants.
A conservatorship is a probate for the living.
Yes.
And you're in the probate court.
Yes.
And so the probate court is jammed. It's overwhelmed. So if we ask for a court date today, we're not going to get a hearing till summer. At least. Now we're in spring, first day of spring. We won't get a hearing till Christmas.
Exactly.
So, that's what the planning is all about. It's not a lesson in morbidity.
No. And I have to thank you because you've always been that attorney that I enjoy so much working with, because not only you guys care, but you guys are diligent. You, like I said, you cross every T, you dot every I. You look forward to avoiding litigations, problems.
Yeah.
You look at solving them before they...
I appreciate you saying that. I always tease the clients and I say, on this floor, on this side of the building, we don't like court. That side? They like.
But it's true.
But I mean, so we do have a very vigorous trust and probate litigation department.
Yes.
So we do have that level of expertise. It teaches us as we go through the cases
what to avoid.
What didn't work there, when we see what other lawyers drafted, or not to say that our plans, that there's no litigation on the plans that we do, because families are families and they're going to blow up. But
you minimize the risk.
Yes, totally minimize the risk. And we have trust administration attorneys that help trustees after the client has passed away. We help them, guide them on how to administer the trust, distribute the trust, the tax ramifications, and we can do all of that in addition to the planning. And we have old lawyers and we have young lawyers, so there's a level of succession if something happens to us. Because my clients always say, "You're never going to die, right?" Never.
We're too young for that. We're too young for that.
No, but I have to assure them. I say, "Hey, you know what? We don't know that any of us are getting home."
And that's why like I said, we love working with Ferruzzo because they bring that level of expertise. They bring the succession. Clients know they'll be taken care of for years to come, and they don't have any doubts about that. And they also know that everything that they do, it is to minimize litigation, to minimize risk. And we feel honored to get your referrals because we feel that at the level of expertise you guys have, trusting us.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, we felt honored, and I always say what we do for the clients, we do it with a heart, but we put our thinking hats. We don't make emotional decisions. They already have enough of emotions going on. We need to be the neutral sounding board, the ones that guide them in a way that it's going to be beneficial in terms of timing, money made, and the overall health of the trust or the probate. Mm-hmm. So that's what we look. We look at maximizing profit, minimizing stress, and working with experts like yourself has been, amazing for us.
Well, it's been amazing for us, and it's a joy.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for always supporting us.
Absolutely. You'll see me again.
Thank you, Cheryl.